The Toronto real estate market is seeing the largest price declines in all of Canada right now, while just up the highway in Ottawa, they continue to see year-over-year price increases. What the heck's going on there? We're going to dive into the stats and figure out why. Hey there, welcome back to Bald Prairie Real Estate. My name is 𝗵𝗲𝗍𝗂, real estate agent in Regina, Saskatchewan, and that is my trusted assistant, Matilda. This is my monthly Canadian real estate market update for September 2025. I've broken my market update into specific regions. If you want to check out the rest of the country, I'll link my videos below. We've got BC, the Prairies, and then we've got Atlantic Canada and Quebec combined. So take a look at those. But of course, we're going to start this off with another one of my terrible bad dad jokes. What type of underwear do scientists wear? Calvin Klein. If you have a terrible joke I can use in the future, put it in the comments below. Let's figure out what's going on in the Ontario real estate market. I want to start off by talking about the Ottawa real estate market. And as I said in the intro, home prices are increasing in Ottawa, counter to what's happening basically everywhere else in Ontario right now. And everybody immediately says, well, it's because of the federal government there. And absolutely, that's a factor with how much money the federal government's spending. And for the most part, there's been no contraction in the size of the federal government. That's one of the factors keeping house prices not only stable, but increasing. There's always a multitude of factors that drive real estate markets, so it's never going to be just one thing. So let's dive into some of the stats here because there's some interesting trends that we can look at where maybe the market's balancing, heating back up, etc. So let's dive into it. Starting off, taking a look at home sales. If you look at the chart here, you can see with about 1,200 homes sold in the month, significant increase year over year, slightly out versus the 5-year average. But really, that's because the 5-year average right now is including 1,800 homes sold in 2020 and 1,400 homes sold in 2021. You can see there 2022, 2023, 2024, all significantly slower years. I like trying to rewind the clock a little bit, go back before some of what I'm calling the crazy times. 2018, 2019, 13 to 1,500 homes sold. So this would have been lower than both of those two previous years. So while yes, better than recently, still not the strongest year in the Ottawa real estate market. Now let's talk about new listings. Going into 2025, and as we talk about this again in 2026, everybody is going to be talking about all of the mortgages coming up for renewals because they're now coming 5 years due from those super low mortgages we saw in 2020, 2021. And the expectation was, of course, massive waves of all these people that couldn't afford their homes and be forced to put them up for sale. Well, looking at the stats here, yeah, we've seen an increase in listings. Not really sure if you'd call it a giant wave of new listings. And in fact, if you look versus the 5-year average, you can see that we're starting to see things actually slow down when it comes to new listings, not increasing. And even versus the year over year, basically unchanged last couple of months and lower than what it was in June, pretty similar to May. Looking at the pure numbers here, you can see again with about 2,100 new listings above recent history. Then you go back to 2018, 2019, 2020, 1,700 to 2,200. 2020 is a little wonky there, but about 1,700 is kind of more typical. And the government was still spending tons of money back then, hiring everybody they could. So new listings up above those timeframes, but not a massive wave as some people anticipated. Looking at active inventory of the Ottawa real estate market, so that's the number of homes that are currently for sale, is really interesting because it's been an absolute roller coaster ride for the last couple of years. So right now, a little under 4,000 homes for sale in Ottawa, and compared to the 5-year average, it looks like it's crazy high. Look though at 2020, 2021, 1,500 homes for sale. That's how low the inventory was that time of year. It was almost impossible for buyers to find anything. Just there was nothing available to buy. If you rewind the clock, look at 2018. And this is, you can see the start of the decline. It was even, listings were significantly higher in 2017 as well, and it continued to wind the clock back. But you can see that the inventory was really starting to drop well before the COVID craziness even started. That's, of course, due to the Ottawa or the federal government of Ottawa spending a ton of money hiring absolutely everybody. I think the federal government's grown by like 40% in the last 10 years. Absolutely bonkers. So active inventory right now looks versus the 5-year average really, really high. In fact, it's basically just getting back to probably more typical normal times. Now I want to take a look at some of the market balance indicators. You've got months of inventory, sales to new listing ratio, sales to active listing ratio here, and kind of see which direction they're trending. Months of inventory has been trending up now. So at 3 months of inventory, we're right on the edge between buyers and balanced market territory. Looking at the sales to new listing ratio here, you can see started the year at 45, we're now at 58. So that's trending more towards a seller's market and has been consistently basically the entire year trending in that direction. Taking a look at the sales to active listing ratio here, we started at the upper range of a balanced market, got well into the seller's market territory through the spring market. It has started to peter out a little bit. That's more typical. You're going to see a slowdown as the weather cools off typically. Looking at previous years, you can see this trend kind of follow through. But look here, the sales to active listing ratio. I just want to show 2021 here at some points over 200%, 2022 180% in the spring market. Like, these are crazy numbers. If you compare this to the August numbers, you can see last year 33, year before that 38, year before that 40, then it was 92, 130, and we finally get back down to 68, and then 40 back to 2018. So we're still below even before the crazy times, but it's definitely a more active market in Ottawa than the rest of Ontario. So it shouldn't be a surprise at all when we're looking at prices in Ottawa that they've done better than the rest of Ontario. Start of the year, $613,000, now up to $633,000. We've been around that $630,000 range essentially since April, maybe even throw March in there, and been about 2% up year over year. Still not back to, and I don't think it's going to get back to those peak numbers we saw in 2022, closed in almost $700,000 on a point. So still significantly down from those peaks, but as you can see, we're up versus 2023 and up versus 2022. So the last couple of years has actually been an upward trend, not a downward one in Ottawa. If you're watching these stats in Toronto real estate market, seeing home prices decline and probably thinking to yourself, this is the absolute worst time to buy a house in Toronto, and for your specific situation, that could very well be true. I've done a whole video on how to properly time the real estate market. I'll put it up here so you can check it out. There'll be a link in the description below. Or you could be saying, hey, I'm actually ready to buy a house right now. There's a bunch of reasons why, all personal circumstance and situation. I'd love to be your agent if you're in that situation, but unfortunately, I live in Regina and I don't have an Ontario real estate license. But what I do have is a great network of agents in Toronto that I can get you set up with. If you look in the description of this video, right below here, there's a link to my calendar. We can book me in for a buyer's consultation, learn what you're looking for, and get you set up with the perfect real estate agent. Is the Toronto real estate market crashing right now? Well, actually, what I want you guys to do is go in the comments below and let me know how much home prices have to decline before you consider a crash. What I want to do is go through some stats here and let's see what direction the Toronto real estate market is going. Is it getting worse or is it getting better? Let's find out. 2 months in a row, home sales have been up year over year. The Toronto real estate market is rebounding. That's the rose-colored way of saying it. Let's actually look at the data here. 5,200 homes sold. Yeah, it's up 2% versus last year. Basically the worst August they've had on record, basically in line with the 2022 or 2023 numbers, which was also a terrible year, below 2022. Let's continue on. Look at how many homes sold 2021, 2020, 2019. I mean, every other year other than the last couple, it just demolishes this month with home sales. So yeah, sure, it's up, but up versus the worst years ever. Make no mistake about it. There's not a lot of homes selling, but still homes selling in Toronto. Let's take a look at new listings here, because the thought process going into 2025 was, as mortgage rates have gone up and all those with those ultra low mortgages in 2020, well, they're going to be forced to renew into these higher interest rate mortgages and be forced to sell their house. That was the renewal wave that everybody was talking about, and the millions of mortgages set to renew. Well, taking a look at it here, 14,000 new listings this month. That's a lot. You can look at it here versus previous years, going back through the years, 12,000, 12,000, 10,000, 10,000, 18,000 in 2020, about 12,000 in 2019, 12,000 in 2018. Then you get at 2017, 16,000, and 2016, about 12,000 as well. So you can see that, that 12,000-ish comes up a fair bit, and we've got some outliers here and there. No doubt about it, new listings are up, but the idea of this wave of new listings, well, actually, we've seen since May, new listings have actually been dropping every single month. Now, part of that is seasonality. You'll see people will start to think more about summer holidays as we get later in the spring market. But it's not like it's going the other direction with this massive onslaught of all these new listings coming up, because people are struggling to renew with these higher interest rates. Now, if you're out house shopping right now in Toronto, you've got a lot to choose from. 27,000 active listings. Again, a fall off month over month. Looking at it year over year, up 21%. That's actually the smallest year over year increase we've had all year in Toronto. And looking at the 5 year as well, up 74%. That's a big number, but look at it in the previous months, up over 100% earlier this year. So it's actually been trending down, not up. Everybody's been talking about inventories in the Toronto real estate market. but at least trends wise, it's actually shrinking a little bit here. Now, look at it versus other years though, because that's what you really should compare it to. 2024, we're up versus that. Like every single month you look at here throughout the years, you can see it's up significantly. And this is the most active inventory I think they've had in Toronto ever at this time of year. So way up. And again, huge chunk of that is those downtown shoebox condos, but still lots of stuff in general sitting around in Toronto. Let's dive into the market balance trends here, because these are kind of good indicators which direction the market is going. Looking at months of inventory, you can see we're hovering in that 5 to 6 range earlier this year. It's been trending down a couple of months now into 4.5. So we're actually kind of in more of the balance territory according to that metric. Looking at the sales to new listing ratio is interesting here because that has been tightening up, meaning actually trending back. We're currently at a buyer's market, started the year way into a buyer's market, trending back towards the balance market territory for this metric. So at 37 right now, we're at the top end range of the buyer's market, trending back into buyers. You can see though that's still well below basically any year unless you get into 2017. That's the last time we're in kind of the same market conditions for this sales to new listing ratio, but trending up towards a bounce market, not trending down deeper into buyer's market. Looking at the sales to active listing ratio, been hovering around 20 for the entire year. So with this being that 12 to 20 being a bounce market, it's essentially been at the upper end of the range of a balance market, leaning a little bit seller. So a little bit of a misleading thing here. That's why I always say with these trend lines, look at them more as trends. Don't just say, oh, the ratio is 19 right now, so we're in a balance market, or we're in a seller's market. It's not a perfect indicator. Look at the trends. That gives you a better idea. But clearly well below any other month. Like anywhere in this chart, you're not going to find 19. Actually, we had to go back to September last year to be in the same kind of sales to active listing ratio. Nothing even close anywhere else on the chart here in the last 10 years, basically. Let's talk about prices now, because of course everybody's talking about how much home prices are declining in Toronto. They're seeing the largest declines in all of Canada. No real estate market is taking a bigger hit right now than the Toronto real estate market. Let's look at some of the trends here. Maybe we can read some tea leaves, see what's going on here. Even though in a year where prices are going to decline through the course of the year, you see an uptick in the spring. We saw it a little bit this spring, but to say the least, it was a terrible spring market in Toronto when you look back on things. Tracking it, year over year, you can see down 1%, then down 3, down 5, down 5.5, down 4, down 5.5, down 5.5, down 5.2. So that's year over year, each and every single month. Now looking at it, let's go month by month, the actual dollar value decline here, which I thought was really interesting. So January to February, up $1,000. February to March, down $2,000. March to April, down $7,000. April to May, up $3,000. So that should have been kind of where you saw the biggest increase, and it actually was through the year. Still absolutely nothing. Then May to June, down $17,000. June to July, down $14,000, and July to August, down $12,000. So we've got a couple of months in a row now where not only is it slowing down the declines month over month, but also year over year. I mean, I'm nitpicking it, trying to say it. It's not much of a change here, but it's interesting to watch it. We're not seeing an acceleration in price declines for sure. That isn't happening. Look at it though, you can see versus last year, we're well over $1 million, at 1.02. Year before that, almost 1.1 million. 2022, about 1.1 million. 2021, $1.04 million. So essentially price-wise, we're right in between where prices were in 2020 and 2021. So we saw the big run up in prices for that time frame. Basically, that's now you chop that big top end off, and we're essentially at where we were between 20 and 2021. What does this mean for the Toronto real estate market? Well, I've talked about this in the last month's market update as well. I think it's easier to make the argument that we're seeing more signs of stability in the Toronto real estate market than we are seeing for signs of a rapid fall off in prices. Does it mean I think prices are going up? No, I think we're going to continue to see prices decline down. But we are seeing sales picking up a little bit. I mean, small amounts, but it is there. We're seeing the sales to new listing ratio tightening up. So those, again, leaning more towards a market that's showing life in the upward direction than a massive fall off. That's my thoughts on the Ontario real estate market. I'd love to add more cities to this in the future. Let me in the comments below what cities you would love to have me add to this monthly market update, and I'll see if I can make that happen for you guys. If you like this video, please go ahead, give this video a like, hit the subscribe button if you want to keep updated on the Canadian real estate market, and let's chat in the comment section. I always enjoy that.